it's interesting because I am gone from my home a few days a week, that I really get to see, it's amazing how much things shift in like 2 days. And then on the weeks when I have to be away for 3 days, they really have shifted. And last Saturday, last Friday, I was home working out in the vineyard, and I noticed that one of the pear trees was not blossomed yet, but you could see they were there. You know, they were just bound in there tight. And I told my husband, I'm like, that's going to be already in full bloom by the time I come back. And I got home, and I could see it as I drove in, as big white blossoms, you know. Mm-hmm. And if we're not paying attention, it looks like it went from 0 to 100, right? But when we start to slow ourselves down enough that we can actually see all the tiny little steps in the process, that's when it gets really magical, because you get to see that the unfolding, sometimes the unfolding looks really fast, but it's actually happening in little dribs and drabs. And this yesterday, I also noticed then for the first time that this really old apple tree on my land, the little tiny buds that will soon be the blossoms, were just undercover. And it looks as if the branches are just starting to get fuller, even though they still like they're just sticks, right? So what we want to do is remember that everything happens in this sort of like process of moving sort of more slowly, and it's happening even when it's not happening underneath the surface, that it just happens a little bit. But if you're not paying attention, it looks like it's happened all at once. And it's definitely that way in our practice. It's very rare that a pose just suddenly out of nowhere arrives at you in like full glory, right? It's these little openings, these little strengthenings that happen over a consistency of time that eventually blossom. And so that's what one thing we always want to think about. The other thing is that when we're in this place of remembering that, is to realize that sometimes in our practice, it's really good to go back, not just to the basics of practice, but to this place where I call the developmental series just of ourselves as humans. And there are yoga poses and also just other forms that we can take on that were the first sort of developmental stages of how we begin from the womb towards walking and running. And that when we can start to recreate those, because they're so innate in our bodies and so developed in our bodies from way back, and begin to apply those understandings into the actual yoga poses, then we're really hitting on something, because we're getting into these more these little bits of how the growth and how we're able to do amazing things in yoga start way, way, way back, from when we're just learning to put one hand and one knee in front of the other when we're crawling, or learning to stand up, or learning to run, or learning to sit. So we'll be working developmentally today and applying those into the asana as well. So remember that it rarely just happens all at once. Be patient, be patient, be patient. So let's take a moment, close your eyes.